side of the town of Norwood. The first item on the agenda this evening is the approval of the minutes from the June 15th meeting. Does anybody have any comments or any additions they would like to make to the minutes? Please let me know.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Unanimous. Thank you. Couple minute wait here for our next item on the agenda, and that is the site plan review for the redevelopment of existing warehouse building at 750 Everett Street. Attorney James Hilliard, Ms. Sherry Clancy from National Development, Suzanne King from BL Companies will be with this next item on the agenda in a couple of minutes.
Mr. Chairman, this is not an advertised public hearing, and so we don't necessarily have to, wait for the time that it's listed on the agenda. If you want to proceed now, there's nothing really stopping us.
Okay, Paul, you want to give us an overview on the project, and if there's anything we need to get into before we get going, please do.
Okay. So this evening we have a site plan review application for a company to reoccupy a building, 151,000 square foot industrial building that has been vacant for 2 or 3 years. The project involves constructing parking and loading areas on the left side of the existing building that's located at 750 Everett Street. Amazon is the tenant that is planning to occupy that building. The applicant is National Development, and they are the owner of the existing building. At this point, Mr. Chairman, I would turn it over to the applicants to present the project to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is James Hilliard. Record, I represent National Development. I believe tonight the viewing would be Chuck Landry from National Development, Sherry Clancy, National Development, Susan King, and Brad Briggs representing the tenant. As Paul has already told you, the project is on, it's 750 Everett Street. It's located on 14.9 acres of land, 151,000 square feet. This is a warehouse distribution center that had been used as a warehouse distribution center in the past. It's LM zoning district, so all the use is a matter of right. The project meets all of zoning dimensional requirements of the Norwood zoning bylaw as well. There is a substantial and will be a substantial impact on the town of Norwood on fiscal benefits. There'll be a substantial increase in the tax base for the amount of money that will be put into it, including the building permit fees, and in addition, all the vehicles that will be at the warehouse will be registered in the town of Norwood. National Development has been working very closely with the town prior to this meeting tonight. We've had several meetings with the town planner, and I must say he's been very helpful and available during all of this time and under these difficult times of the COVID-19. We have met with the town manager. We've had our meeting with all the department heads. And we have responded to the department heads' comments that they have made on the project. So therefore, what I would like to do is to get into the technical aspects of it, is to introduce Susan King, Sherry Clancy, Chuck Landry, Brad Briggs, to see, and I believe Susan would be the first to give us some information, more detailed information about the project. Are you there, Susan?
Can you make her the presenter so she can show the plans?
Yeah, that's what
I'm here.
So, well, you're making me presenter. Suze King from BL Companies, and I am the civil engineer on the project. And I apologize, my camera's over here, but my screen's over here. So starting off, just to give you an understanding of where we are, Route 1, McDonald's and Burger King down here, up the hill, here's Everett Street. There's the existing site here. Not much is being planned for this site. There's some additional parking going in the front to accommodate the larger van parking stalls. And then the adjacent lot here will be developed for additional parking for the site. I think we start with the grading, the signage and striping just plan here is just the cleanest plan, so you can see what's happening. You have the existing street here, Everett Street, Downey Street, and so there's some striping that will be put on the existing parking here. This parking out front is new. Otherwise, we're just restriping along here. And then over here is we're putting additional parking. And so we can jump into, unfortunately, I should have had another PDF to turn off the hatch for the pavement. This back entrance, this back parking lot has the typical 9 by 20 foot stalls back here where people working in the building would park back here to enter through the office block, which is back here. The remaining parking are for vans, and then there will be staging area and then a loading area here. This area here will have a canopy over it to protect the vans from elements while being loaded. We have the required parking setbacks, as Jim stated. We are meeting the parking count. The stormwater, we have a wetland on the side of the site, and so that's why we're staying with the outside of the wetland area. We're managing the stormwater with underground infiltration chambers and maintaining or slightly decreasing the flow from the site, the peak flow from the site, and following the requirements of the Massachusetts handbook. Let's stop there and see if there are questions as far as site plan goes.
Yes, Stu, I have a quick question, and that is is that a combining of lots with the existing house that's there adjacent to it?
Yes,
Yeah, right here. There's a house that's somewhat
Right.
in disrepair. Now, there's
Right.
also a building down the back here, an office building. Is that going to be incorporated into the project as well?
no, the office building is on the next site down, but there is some parking there now that's a local car dealership uses it for some backlot parking. That's included we're purchasing that to add to this existing building, and that's where all the development's taking place on the building that lot you said where you saw the house that's kind of in disrepair. That is part of this site.
Okay. But it's not currently part of the parcel.
No, it's being acquired once we obtain these approvals.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a quick question.
Yes, Mr. Fetchikow.
You said you have required parking. What is the parking count that you're proposing? Like,
So there's a total of 368, and it's broken down with the 109 typical parking stalls and 259 larger 11 by 27 for van stalls.
And that includes the existing parking that's on around the building as well.
Correct.
Yeah, it's on the parking on the right-hand side. I couldn't get in there today because it's fenced off, but when I was up there a couple of weeks ago, when you drive in on the right-hand side, there you go, on the Westwood line. There's currently parking up against is that going away? And I think in very light, light highlights, you can still see on my plan, you can still see those parkings. So the parking is basically going away on the right side of the building? Is
So
that my understanding?
We're maintaining the existing
Against the building you have, yes. But against the boundary, I guess, is against the Westwood line.
We're
Yeah,
not showing you the parking there.
no parking.
No part, so that's going away. As far as you count. Okay.
Yes,
And just going back to Al's, because I was curious too. The office building, I know that the Holtman lot is 2 lots, but the office building that's way in the back, that is not, I was looking at the demolition plan, that's staying, that's not part of your plan.
yeah, that's staying, that's owned by someone else.
Okay, all right. I wasn't quite sure on that one. Okay, thank you.
Where is that access going to be for that office building after this takes place? It appears to come down the same driveway.
It's off of Downey Street. We're not going to change it. It's going to be off of Downey Street just as it is today.
Okay,
That doesn't change.
thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to ask if they could just show us where all the different exits and entrances are, and how many are there?
Are you asking about the parking or the building, sir?
Parking onto the site, all the entrances and all the exits.
Yeah, Sue's.
So we have 3 driveways out front, and then we're adding a driveway here, and then this back area here is a large opening for the parking, and we're gonna have one formal driveway in the back here. So there are gonna be 5 points of access. These 3 are existing. This is a driveway that we're converting to a commercial driveway, and then this we're formalizing into a driveway to the parking lot.
Okay, and you said there was an old house in disrepair. It's all commercial now after that'll be knocked down, and there's no other residential near there? Just the remnants of that old?
No, yeah, it's just that house, and then everything else around it is commercial. So this house will go away.
And I just had a question about the traffic. Maybe I'm early. If I'm too early, we can talk about it later. And it's just about what kind of an increase are we looking at, and do we need a traffic study?
We prepared sorry, go ahead, Sherry.
No, that's okay. You go ahead.
We prepared a traffic study. The good thing about this tenant is that it does not make any sense for them to be sitting in traffic. And so what they do is they have a delayed start around 9 or 10. So as the morning peak is ending, that's when they'll come out. So they're not adding anything to the morning or afternoon peak, because then when they're coming back to the site, it's after the afternoon peak as well. And so you will be, as you know, as far as we all know, getting out of Norwood is a good time in the morning. This will be after it. So you're not at 7:30, 8 a.m. You're not going to be competing with vans coming out of this site. And then coming home at night, the vans are going to be out from 9 a.m. to, they have about 10 hours. So shifts. And so it'd be leaving the site between, 9 and, noon, depending upon the daily requirements, and then coming back between, 7 p.m. and 10-ish or so.
Thank you.
And to that point, there is only one shift, correct, running?
No,
No.
they run 24 hours a day.
They do. So what are the
It's
after hours?
Is a shift at night that is inside the building, sorting packages and arranging things for the deliveries for the next day. but there's no deliveries at night. There's only work inside the building at night.
No package deliveries to.
No package deliveries at night, yeah.
Car deliveries to this building overnight.
And how do they receive their packages for delivery? Trailer trucks?
Yes,
Yeah.
and so this building's a little unique where, so this is actually where the trucks, they back into the building. And so that's why this is really short looking here, because the majority of the truck is actually inside the building, and there's an interior dock that they're unloading at.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions on this area? Suze, you want to continue?
Suze, why don't you go to the landscape plan?
Usually the next question. So as far as landscaping, we'll be putting plantings, vegetation, trees along the front here. Some mix of the trees in the, along the perimeter here, along Downey Street here, in along the back here and in the islands. And so, varying colors, varying greens.
Basically, we're screening around the entirety of the parking area with new landscaping.
With that taking place, with the elevation of the residential, what amount of gravel or whatever is there, are you going to take from the site? Do you anticipate removal?
We do anticipate removal, partly because there is material that's stored on the site now, that's some contractor piles and things that have to go away. And then we are going to be excavating to construct the subsurface stormwater system. So we'll be removing material for that. So we are going to be taking a good amount of material off site because of those excavations.
Any idea on the quantity in yards, cubic yards?
I don't know exactly. We've tried to maintain, we built a small, Suze, if you could want to point out where we have tried to, we've tried to create some berms on the site as well, which we think helps with the screening, but it also keeps more material on site. I don't have the exact calculation at this time. We can find that out for you though, if you want.
Thank you. Yes, please.
I was gonna say, I believe it's in the order of 500 cubic yards.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I got a couple of questions and comments.
go right ahead.
So, as Attorney Hilliard indicated, the plans were sent to the standard list of a dozen different departments in town seeking out their comments on the project. We did have a department level review meeting with the applicant, and they received written comments from the town engineer, Mark Ryan, from the light department, and from myself. They were responsive to those comments and revised the plan to address all of our concerns. And so we were happy that that they were working with us and addressing our concerns. I have a question for, I guess, Attorney Hilliard. Do you have a projection for the number of jobs that will be created at this site now?
I think, can Jessica answer that?
I'm gonna ask if Brad Griggs is on. Brad, are you on?
Jessica's on.
I'm sorry?
Jessica's on.
Can you
She
answer
could-
that? Susan?
Jessica.
Jessica, can you?
You're on mute.
Jess, you're muted.
Are
Apologies.
you on, Jessica?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi,
Yes.
this is Jessica Schumacher. I'm an economic development and public
Okay.
policy manager from Amazon, the tenant. And the way our these last mile delivery stations work is we can expect about 50 to 75 full-time Amazon associate jobs. Those jobs pay at least $15 an hour more in the Northeast, with full benefits, the same benefits that I or my colleagues in the corporate office get. So health, medical, dental, paid time off, etc. There'll be additional part-time roles that fill in, depending on the volume of packages we're processing, more in our peak season, which is the holidays, less off-peak. And then additionally, we employ third-party delivery service providers. These are our van drivers. They're employed by independent companies that contract with us to deliver the packages. But in those contracts, we mandate they get at least, again, $15 an hour. It's probably more in the Northeast. And those jobs we can expect between 130 to 170 full-time van driver roles.
Thank you, Jess.
You're welcome.
Thank you. It was indicated earlier that the town will receive some fiscal benefits from auto excise tax. And so is it true that
Yes.
that all the vehicles that are going to be coming and going out of that site, I guess with the exception of the private van drivers, will those all be registered and will the town receive that?
Yeah, the way our delivery service provider operations work is Amazon purchases the vans and then we lease them to our third-party delivery service providers. And we're moving to a new mode, DSP 2.0 we call it, where we plan to register the vans where they're garaged. So yes, Norwood would be getting the excise tax on those vans.
And is there any way that you can provide some assurances or guarantees? And so if I were to make a condition of approval of this site plan approval that all the vehicles will be registered in Norwood, is that something that Amazon would agree to?
I'm double checking, but I believe that is our plan, to register all those vehicles in Norwood. If it's a condition of site plan approval, then obviously we'd have to do it, but that is our plan.
Okay. The other, I wanted to talk for a moment about traffic.
Sure.
Go ahead.
No, please.
So the traffic study was completed and I reviewed it. It was sent to the town engineer and he reviewed it. And the unique thing is that they are proposing to run off-peak predominantly. The vans will leave in the morning around 9:30 or 10, which is at the end of the morning peak. And they'll return later after 6 or 7 o'clock and miss the PM peak traffic. That's an operational decision on how Amazon is going to run this facility. If and that makes the impacts to traffic reasonable. This is an existing building, and the town had expectations that building would be reoccupied and there'd be more employees and traffic generated when it was put back into productive use. But the way Amazon proposes to operate it is what makes the project work from a traffic standpoint. If the vehicles were going to be leaving at 6 or 7 in the morning and hitting peak traffic, it would impact the functioning of the surrounding intersections significantly. Currently, the intersections that surround that site are not doing well. Particularly the intersection of University Ave and Route 1 fails in the morning peak. In the event Amazon decides to change how they, a management decision on change how that operation is, it will adversely affect traffic in the area. Is there anything the town can do? Can I make a condition of approval which says, you had indicated and the planning board made findings from the information presented that this will be the operation of this facility. And if there's any changes to that that would impact traffic, I think, we'd want to know about that and we'd want to take another look at the project. So
as Sherry noted, it's in our interest, obviously, not to have our drivers stuck in traffic anymore. That it's in the interest of the town for those vehicles to be stuck in traffic because they have to complete a certain number of package deliveries every day. They operate within a 45-minute drive time of the site. It takes about 10 hours to complete their shift, as was noted. We found people are willing to receive packages up to 9 p.m. at night, which has allowed us to shift our schedule. And we're launching this new operation. It's not just in Norwood, but it's nationwide as we launch these new delivery sites. The only times that may change a little is during our peak holiday season, when we just demand is so much greater. That's when we bring in extra vehicles, et cetera. We operate our flex drivers a little at more capacity. And that only occurs between Thanksgiving and Christmas usually. So, we have every interest, the same as that our interests are aligned in terms of minimizing the impact of traffic on this site. It's why we get,
Paul, I would just add that the materials that we submitted that are a part and parcel of our application include the traffic study, and that what we have demonstrated in the traffic study based upon the operations of this tenant. This is definitely part of our application. We would anticipate if there was to be a change in operations, we may have to come back to the board. We understand that. But right now, the way we have put our application together, this information and all of the operations that contributed to the traffic study, that's the way we're expecting to operate.
Okay, I'll probably include some language in the decision on this, which confirms that was what was proposed, and that's specifically what the planning board's approving. And if there are any major changes to the operation, that I think you're going to need to come back to the planning board to revisit the traffic situation.
That's acceptable.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Patrickowski.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Question to Paul, and just to refresh my memory. I was just looking at the parking spots, and is it because of the additional parking? Why didn't this trigger a special permit? Can you just explain, refresh my memory, why this didn't trigger a special permit, a major special permit?
So there are a number of project triggering thresholds that trigger the need for a major project special permit. One of the triggering thresholds is if an applicant proposes to build 100 or more parking spaces on a site. This application, they've indicated to us and stated in the application materials that they're proposing an increase of 85 parking spaces. Thanks for that little hand, Suze. And that is below the triggering threshold for a major project special permit. Prior to submitting this particular application, I had a number of conversations with Attorney Hilliard about this. We consulted with Matt Walsh, the building commissioner, on this as a zoning question, to have him make a determination as to what the regulatory process was going to be. And we agreed that with no vertical construction, no new buildings being proposed, this is all basically a parking lot for this project, and the number of spaces does not exceed 100. So it fell within the site plan review. And as the board knows, site plan reviews don't always require the need for a special for a public hearing and notification in the newspaper. So we're handling this project the same way that we do for all the other site plan reviews that the board reviews and approves.
Okay, thanks, Paul. I mean, but I know the 100 car thing, and we were told we're going to have 368 spaces. And if it's only 85, I'm just hard to believe there were 283 spaces there. What am I missing?
I'll answer part of it, and then I'll hand it off to the applicant to elaborate. But the Holtman property to the north, where Downey Street, where the cul-de-sac is,
yeah,
you can see cars lined up on the edge of the cul-de-sac. Those cars are part of an approved special permit from the zoning board for open lot storage. They were approved by the zoning board years back for 98 vehicles to be stored on that site. And so it's my understanding that was part of the basis for the calculations for the number of new spaces that would be constructed. And I'll stop there and let the applicant elaborate on that.
Yeah, I saw
Oh,
the
I can-
ZBA
this is-
thing. Go ahead, Jim.
This is Chuck Lander. I can jump in there. So Paul has it right. It was 98 spaces on the Holtman land that were approved via special permit. I think it was back in the 90s. And then on the 750 land, which we currently own, we have permitted and striped 184, I think, existing spaces. So when you add those two up, you get to, I think it's 283. And we're going from 283 to the 365, which shows the net increase of 85-ish spaces.
So basically that cul-de-sac was out of the equation because of the ZBA decision is pretty, so that's the answer. Because if you count them in, then you're over.
Right, yes.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Just a question for, I think it was Sue, maybe, or Jessica, on the staggered times that you're leaving. Just, you may want to sit up there and look what time UPS pulls out, because it's like a caravan around 9 or 9:30. There's like 100 UPS trucks all pull out at once. So just kind of offset your
Yeah.
time with them, or you'll be stuck at that light down there for a long time.
Appreciate that. And we do it in waves, so it's not all at once. So it's every 30 minutes or so, you have a new wave of between 20 and 40 vans.
Yeah, because UPS kind of does that also, but they send out a lot of trucks at once. And then the last quick question I have is on the plan, on the right side where you're gonna take trucks, incoming trucks? Right there, and you mentioned you have a 24-hour operation. Do you have limits or times when you will accept deliveries coming into those loading docks?
So our line haul trucks come mostly overnight. That's when they're scheduled between about 10 p.m. and I think 5 a.m. We occasionally get 1 or 2 line haul trucks during the day because of weather or traffic or, delay leaving the warehouse. But the way the whole system is set up is that's our associates come and work overnight. Their shifts are overnight, and so they're there to unload those line haul trucks. So the whole operation is based around this timing where the line haul trucks come overnight. The packages are unpacked overnight, loaded onto baker's racks of hockey bags, basically, where they're waiting to go in the vans the next morning. But our shift times mean our associates are coming overnight when those line hauls are coming in.
Right, so in at night, out during the day. Do you anticipate in any other your facilities like this, where you would be queuing trucks, waiting to get in there? Where would they queue?
The line haul trucks are staggered in their arrival, so we don't anticipate queuing. They arrive overnight.
I can just anticipate people in Westwood if they're.
And we use yard marshals to make sure that we're maintaining orderly traffic flow within our site.
And excuse me, this is Chuck again. Just to clarify, Jess, I think we had heard at least at one point that we were only talking about 8 to 10 trucks a day that were coming
Overnight.
in. So overnight, excuse me. So the amount of inbound traffic is really quite limited.
And they are staggered.
And staggered, correct.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all for right now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ernie. Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, I have one more comment related to traffic. The abutting neighborhood in Westwood is residential. And I would like to try to make a condition of approval that limits heavy truck traffic from turning left out of the site and going into that residential neighborhood in Westwood. I wanted to just get a reading from the applicant whether that would be an acceptable condition.
I think that will work for us. I think there's already limitations for truck traffic. Isn't there already signed down there that you can't take that way already?
That's correct. There is no truck traffic as you take a left out of the parking lot. So our routes generally are going to be coming out of the parking lot, heading right anyways towards University Ave.
I believe that's already signed that way, that you can't take trucks down that road. I mean, you could take a car or van, but you couldn't take a truck.
All right, so I think I'm gonna try to memorialize that in a condition so that our neighbors in Westwood aren't concerned that there'll be heavy truck traffic coming, through their neighborhoods in the middle of the night.
Thank you, Paul.
Any additional questions?
Mr. Chairman, I think, I do have a question. I think they may have spoken to it before, but the time again for the large trucks to be coming in, what are those times when you're gonna get, I guess you said 8 to 10 trucks? I thought you said, is it between 10 and 5 in the morning, or is that what it was?
It's in the overnight hours. And then obviously sometimes we get 1 or 2 during the day.
Okay, so if you're a Westwood neighbor, is there any mitigating circumstances or anything to pacify them if it gets very noisy, having those trucks coming at that time? That's the issue I'm worried about.
Yeah, I get it. The previous tenant also operated in this building with, I think it was Martinetti. Was it Martinetti, Chuck, Liquors, or?
MS Walker.
MS Walker. And they also took delivery. So this is not something new. They did the same thing. I think one of the best things about this building is that all the trucks pull into the building. You actually are inside the building, and that's very rare to have truck loading be able to be within the building. I think that is the mitigating factor here, because all this is going to be done within the building. They're not going to be outdoors unloading in a typical truck loading area. They pull right into the building, and then I think that will be the thing that will be the best mitigation of all.
And MS Walker, to clarify, also had evening hours as well. They operated 24 hours a day, so there were trucks moving around the site in the evenings when they were in the building.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I? So it sounds that there will be no idling diesel trucks outside this facility during the unloading and loading process?
It sure does to me, if they're.
Yeah,
No, there won't be.
Okay,
we could accept a condition of no idling. We'd be all right with that.
and just to clarify on the direction, it sounds as if none of the large tractor trailer type vehicles will be coming off the East Street Rotary and approaching this facility from that side. It would all be off the University Ave ramp.
Yes.
Okay.
Just one more question when it comes to that. How many trucks can you fit in at one time to unload?
5.
5.
5. Thank you.
And if we're only talking 10, possibly a day, that's just two turnovers.
Yep.
Right.
All the 5 days. So that's not a lot. In your 5 to 7, your 10-hour shift, whatever it is. If it's 10 p.m. to 5 a.m.
I do have another question. The vans themselves, they're lightweight, rather ordinary vehicles. They don't require like a CDL or anything to drive.
No, they're Sprinter vans.
Passenger vans. Okay.
With a blue stripe.
We've all seen them.
You've seen them.
Yep.
And how many vans do you anticipate being on the property that you're parking? You said 100 that 120 you're going to lease, and 50 for your own employees. Is 170. Okay, and you got 360 or 370 plus 98. How do we need all the spaces?
So we have 368 spaces for vans. However, that includes a small buffer for, there's no maintenance on site, but if a van does break down and it's off site being fixed, there are a couple of extra vans on site that a driver can take. And then also there are about 40 stalls that are not extra, but overnight would be used as, wouldn't have a van in it, so that first wave of van drivers can come in with their personal vehicles. They'll park in one of those empty spaces, get in their van, and, go through the staging and loading and then leave the site so that the next wave will come in with their personal vehicles, park in the spaces that the first wave vans were in, and it's a cycle that they keep on backfilling in the parking.
So none of those vans are filled overnight as part of the loading and sorting.
No.
They're done in the morning by the driver?
Yeah, the first wave pulls in around 9:30. Then the driver and a skeleton crew remain at the site to help load the vans that have been prepared with the baker's racks and the hockey bags in order. And they get loaded in a wave of about, looks like 40 vehicles at once, 20 to 40. Also, I should mention that we build these sites to operate at peak capacity. So we put in, what we need to make it through the holidays, but we don't always obviously operate that capacity during most of the year.
I think one of the things, Paul, Mr. Healthy, I think we want to consider in this is the no more additional leasing of spaces to automobile dealership as a condition.
That's acceptable.
Yeah, that makes sense. If a portion of this property is subject to a special permit now from the Board of Appeals, I think we want to make it clear that use is being sunsetted and it's being replaced by this use.
That's agreeable, Paul.
Okay.
Thank you. Where do we want to go next? Mr. Halkiotis, regarding all the feedback, I see the notes here from the light department, and that's everything.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anyone from the public that has any questions or comments, and I think now would be a good time to open that up to anyone that might be tuned in.
Mr. Pachakowski, sir.
Just one quick question. Attorney Hilliard, you had written a letter to Al Getz, telling him why there's no conservation issues here. And you asked him if, did you hear anything back? Are you good there? Are you all set with that?
Yes, we actually had a virtual meeting with the zoning board of appeal.
No,
And after that meeting, they voted actually to the Conservation Commission. And after that meeting, they voted to rescind the letter they had sent to us requesting a meeting to determine whether or not it was an applicable issue for the Conservation Commission. So that's been resolved.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, on that note, I did talk to Al Getz last week about the project, and he really only had two comments. One, when we attended the Conservation Commission meeting discussing this, it had been discovered that the original orders of conditions for this site back in the early 70s were never recorded at the Registry of Deeds. And we would like to ask the applicant if they'd be willing to take care of that and record that and kind of clean up a mistake that was made years ago. The other comment was, and Al's standard practices on when a project comes in, a redevelopment or something like this, that we take a look at the wetland resource area, and if there's any debris or trash that's been accumulating there over the years, that any junk that's been dumped there just simply be cleaned out to try to clean up that resource area. So I wanted to ask the applicant if they would be willing to do those two things.
Well, we've already beat you to it. We already cleaned everything, and we gave to Al all of our catch basin cleaning records, and we also provided him with an operations and maintenance plan that we are following, and typically those would be attached to orders of conditions today if it was a new one, but apparently they never had a document like that on the old one, so we provided him with that, and I think he's satisfied with that. We've done all the cleanup already, and we gave him a schedule of how frequently we're going to continue to monitor all of the wetland resource areas and also sweeping and cleaning catch basins and all that. We gave them a written operations and maintenance plan.
Thank you.
So Sherry, you'll forward that to Mr. Halkiotis and we can incorporate that in the decision?
Yes, I can, would be happy to attach the operations and maintenance plan to your permit. That's fine. That's a nice way of, tying it up with a bow. I think it's a good way to do it. So I'll forward it to Paul.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. We good? Anything further? Mr. Hilliard, anything further from your end?
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for this meeting.
You're welcome, sir. Anything else from anyone at this point? Motion to close the hearing?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd just like to add, if anyone ever thought about putting solar on the roof, I love these big flat roofs and they're great for solar. I don't know if the operation's heavily automated or uses a large load for anything like that, but a nice solar array on the roof would be a nice little touch. Just, just my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think Nationals looked at all of our assets and we've looked at every single building we own to see what the viability is for a solar array on each of those buildings. We did not identify this building as a good case for that. I think it actually has kind of a new roof on it right now anyway, but we can, as needs change, we can always go back and visit that again. But right now we have picked other buildings, but we hadn't picked this particular one.
Thank you. We don't want to take the business away from the Norwood Light Department.
I know, they have a great meter on this site. They're gonna make a lot of money.
That's a great part of your investment in the town of Norwood.
Mhm.
So, okay. Will I hear a motion to close the hearing?
So moved.
Second, we have a motion and a second to close the hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Mr. Chairman, just a question. Do we need to, on a virtual meeting like this, do we have to do a roll call?
We will do that in addition to the, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. All opposed? Unanimous. Okay, Mr. Pachakowski.
Yes, but I don't think there was I don't think there was an open hearing, a public hearing. I don't think it would, yes, I'll vote yes.
Mr. Rob Bamber.
Yes.
Mr. Joe Sheehan.
Yes.
Mr. Brian Hatchie.
Yes.
The chairman votes yes. So we're closed. Paul, are you ready with your notes that would be willing to take a vote this evening?
So the board can take a vote now if you're ready to vote. What I would propose to do is to draft a decision and have that decision ready for the board's next meeting on July 13th. And the board could then review the conditions and make any suggested changes to it.
Okay. Anybody object to that?
No.
Okay.
I'm good.
Anybody want to make a motion to vote on the proposal for the site development at 732 and 750 Everett Street?
I'll move that, Mr. Chairman, I'll move that we approve.
And do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay,
With the conditions,
With the conditions, yes.
okay. All in favor? All opposed? Unanimous. Mr. Petrikowski,
yes.
Mr. Sheehan,
Yes.
Mr. Bamber,
Yes.
Mr. Hatchie,
Yes.
and the chairman votes yes. So we have an approval based on the conditions that are going to be outlined by the planning director. And anybody else, any other input at this time? Other than that, we'll call it a day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I know these meetings are difficult on everyone, and but you'll get so used to them, it may be part of the new normal, as they say. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We'll see you on the
Thank you.
13th. Bye now.
Good luck.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Not too bad, huh? 7:50, 7:52. Will not required plan for 74 Ledgeview Drive. Assessors map 20, sheet 13, lot 17, represented by attorney David Hearn. Good evening, Counselor.
All right, had to turn it on, Mr. Chairman. Good evening to you and the other members.
Good evening.
I'm happy to present on this if you want or answer any questions.
Where is Ledgeview Drive that you're proposing here?
This is out on the, almost to Route 95. In fact, I think some of the houses along one section of Ledgeview Drive back up to Route 95. The property that we're talking about, number 74, is a parcel that actually has a connection, as it's shown on the plan, out to Neponset Street. And just before you come to the on-ramp for Route 95 South. So what is presented here is a somewhat odd-shaped lot because of that 40-foot strip that runs all the way out to Neponset Street. And we're proposing on this plan to take lot 17 and to reconfigure it as lots 17A and 17B. And those are shown on the plan. 17B is the section of the 40-foot strip running from Neponset Street back about 240 odd feet. On one side, it's 248.67. On the other, it's I'm sorry, it's 142.56, and on one side, and 136.50 on the other. So it is just running back close to 140 feet, average 140 feet, and it's 40 feet in width. My client, who owns all of lot 17, proposes to convey lot 17B to the owner of 855 Neponset Street, which is the property shown just adjacent to the strip of land. So we're not creating a buildable lot, we're simply creating a new lot that will be added to an existing lot. And this is to resolve some issues and questions that had arisen between the property owners over the years.
Mr. Chairman,
There's no easement or anything in this area?
Well, the plan shows an easement, a right of way on a plan going back to 1986. We're not doing anything that would disturb that right of way. In fact, there's another right of way shown on an earlier deed on the part of the 40-foot strip that's being retained as part of lot 17A. We're not doing anything to change any rights that people may have to access either property shown on Neponset Street to the right or left, to either side of the 40-foot strip. Nothing will change in that respect. It's simply the ownership of a portion of the 40-foot strip that will change. My client owns that 40-foot strip subject to certain rights of way or easements. Ms. Jackson, who owns 855 Neponset, will own lot 17B, subject to any existing rights of way that affect that piece of land. Not changing any of that, simply changing the ownership of a portion of this lot.
So why isn't there two Form As, if you will, combining this with this or this with this one, whichever it is?
We're not combining it on a plan. Ms. Jackson will own whatever the lot is that she has, and she'll also own lot 17B. You don't have to combine them in order to have them under common ownership. I can't tell you how many times I have dealt with conveyances of property where there are multiple lots described under one ownership. And when it's particularly, some of them are acquired at the same time, some of them are acquired, as in this case, at different times. So we don't need a Form A to show a combination of lot 17B with the other lot. That's not necessary. All we want is to be able to convey that lot to the owner of 855 Neponset Street.
Yeah, it may not be required, but don't you think it's a good way to clean some of this stuff up that you've endured all these years, Counselor?
No, it's not. It has nothing to do with what we've endured over the years, Mr. Chairman. My client has had good title to that piece of property for a number of years, running all the way out to Neponset Street. He doesn't need it. He doesn't want it. Ms. Jackson and her family would like to have it, and we're going to convey it to them, but we had to have a way to carve it off, and that's what we're doing. If she wants to do a perimeter plan or something later on, she can certainly do that. But in terms of conveying a lot called lot 17B, this method is perfectly fine. I've conveyed, as recently as past Friday, I was involved in the conveyance of a lot that consisted of 3 parcels. My own property consists of 3 parcels that were put together different ways. So very often you find ownership of land that consists of different parcels shown on different plans. It does not affect the title or the validity of the title.
But this space in between here, that keeps 17A within the zoning, correct? That the
17A continues to conform to zoning. It does, in terms of frontage, lot size, and everything else.
Okay.
It has the remaining lot 17A will have 21,775 square feet, well in excess of the requirement.
Okay. Anybody else? Any questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Petchakowski.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Go ahead, Ernie.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any question for Mr. Petchakowski or anybody.
I can't hear him.
It looks like Ernie's having some technical difficulties. His screen seems frozen.
I thought he was a little still.
Mr. Chairman, I'll ask a question if Mr. Hearn could answer it. Mr. Hearn, what easements or uses currently on that strip? Is there like a vehicle access or anything on it?
Right. Lot 17B provides that area, provides access to both Ms. Jackson's property and to the other property on the other side that has the name Schofield on it. So they come into a driveway, and here I am pointing at it, doesn't do any good, but they come into a driveway off of Neponset Street to that 40-foot strip, and it accesses parking areas to the rear of their houses. So it's one piece of access to Neponset Street rather than having multiple points of access at that point of the street. You can see how close the entrance to Interstate 95 is.
Yeah.
So it's been used by those properties over the years, and nothing is being done that would disturb that. All of those are preserved.
Okay.
Mr. Patrickowski, sir. You're muted. There you go.
Thank you. I lost connection there for a minute, so what I asked you may have answered while I was offline. I was trying to wave and get your attention, but I couldn't hear anything. Attorney Hearn, just first of all, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself from voting. I know it's just an A&R, but the Schofield Churn property are my relatives. I'm very familiar with that property. Attorney Hearn, just that you may have mentioned it, but that right of way, which will be new lot 17B, is the driveway into the Schofield property. So that's going to remain the same. I'm assuming that isn't changing at all. And I know that house is on the market, and I just concerned for them that new ownership will still be able to have a driveway. And the second question I have is, I thought, and I'm probably wrong, I thought the right-of-way went all the way back to the back of 17A, you know, that if that right-of-way continued all the way to the, so that the Schofields could access, if need be, their back piece of property behind their home.
That is correct. And that's shown on the plan, Mr. Petrikowski.
I'm sorry, I can't read. All right, it's probably, if I have my back. So they have a right of way still up to their back piece of property. Okay.
That's right. That's called out as right of way reserved by Jenny Schofield in book 6226, page 403. In answer to your first question, yes, that is their access to both the Jackson property and the Schofield property, and nothing is changing with respect to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Mr.
Bambo,
Chairman? Mr. Chairman,
yes.
I have a question for Mr. Hearn. I'm having trouble seeing who owns what. Which one is the Jackson property? Which one is the Schofield? As you're looking toward Neponset Street, which one is on the right and which one's on the left?
If you were standing in lot 17B and were looking toward Neponset Street, Jackson would be to your right toward 95, Schofield to your left toward town.
Okay, and with that, that long stretch that we're talking about, when you have lot 17B, it's not the whole stretch. It's all, is it half of it or is it the whole stretch?
No, it goes back. The whole strip is about 242 feet on one side, 248 on the other. This 17B that we're dealing with has a measurement of 136.50 on the Jackson side and 142.56 on the Schofield side. So it's a little more than half going back.
So 17A will keep that other stretch, the remainder.
106 feet by 40 feet will be retained by as part of 17A.
Okay, and right now there is a driveway there?
There is the driveway comes up only part way on this, and it's pretty rough. It's not very well paved. It's as much dirt as pavement these days. It does not go through. And by the time you get back to the point where we've drawn the the boundary line, there's nothing there but pretty much dirt.
Okay, but on Naponton Street, they do
Yes.
use it.
There's some old pavement and it's used, it is used all the time. That's the access to both of those houses.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So are the Schofields gonna run into a problem here?
I'm sorry,
Are the Schofields gonna run into a problem on the driveway?
in terms of what? No.
In the-
I'm not, I don't advise them and I don't represent them, but Mr. Burrow, from as a conveyancer of over 40 years' experience, I will tell you that none of this affects the right of way that runs for the benefit of their property. And that was reserved by, I think it was by Jenny Schofield many years ago. That right of way continues, and nothing that either my client or Ms. Jackson is doing in connection with this transaction, or I think could do going forward, would deprive the Schofield family of access on that right of way to their property.
Okay. Anybody, anything else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
before I make my comment, I wanted to give the board members a little bit of guidance to help you review the plans that you're seeing on the screen using the GoToMeeting software. If you hover to the right side of your screen, if you take your mouse, your arrow, and move it to the right side of the screen, you'll see a window pop up with a plus and a minus. This will enable you to expand and get a better view at any part. Once you're zoomed in, you can click on the map and move around freely to, so that you can see other parts of the plan. So I figured this out a couple of weeks ago, and it makes it a lot easier for reviewing the plans and zooming in when we're at meetings like this.
Wow. How about that?
I just discovered that during the prior hearing.
So I have reviewed the A&R plan. I also had a lot of questions for Attorney Hearn, and we talked this afternoon. He answered all my questions, and I think that this plan is in good shape, and I would recommend to the board to vote to approve the approval of our required plan.
Okay, I get a motion to approve the plan
So moved?
and a second.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Okay, Mr. Petrikowski, may I have your vote, please?
Mr. Chairman, just in fairness, it is my family. I'm going to recuse myself just
For the record.
for the record, yeah.
Okay, Mr. Bamber,
Aye.
Mr. Hatchie,
Aye.
Mr. Joseph Sheehan,
Aye.
and the chairman votes aye. So we have 4-0.
Thank you very much.
We're all set.
Right.
Okay. Now, Mr. David Hearn, will you change your hat, please?
Like, you want me to stand up and turn around?
Yes. Turn around, spin around twice.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Ready when you are, Mr. Chairman.
I'd say we're ready, Counselor.
Okay, thank you. I had asked Mr. Halkiotis for an opportunity to speak to the board in connection with the idea of over 55 housing in the town of Norwood. And the question has come up with clients, particularly recently, looking at different pieces of property as to whether over 55 would be allowed. Right now, we have the only reference to over 55 that I'm aware of in our zoning bylaw has to do with the Forbes Hill planned mixed-use overlay district, which does allow over 55 housing. It has a limitation that generally applies to residential use. There are 25 units per acre, a total of 175 units, and that, I think, could be perfectly reasonable for most developments. But looking at other areas of the town in terms of what could be done for over 55, I'm sure several of you have probably heard from even some of your contemporaries. Some of you might be approaching 55, people who are thinking of maybe downsizing, staying in the town, and hoping to find a way to move into an over 55 and age-restricted development. The difficulty that some of my clients have come across is that we really don't mention it very much, except for the Forbes Hill site, and in our bylaw, and I think it falls then under multifamily use, which is allowed in several districts, not all districts. It's allowed in apartment district, general business, central business, highway business, and limited business, and only by special permit from the zoning board. I think that it's the type of use that probably ought to be governed by special permits so that good planning can go into it. And the other possible way of doing it is flexible residential development, which is allowed in the same districts that I just mentioned. Apartments, general business, central business, highway business, and limited business. Now, I have to say, I'm not that conversant with the proposals for the Route 1 rezoning, and I know you've been discussing those recently, and I'm looking forward to seeing more discussion on that as to whether that might provide an avenue for to make over 55 development more available. But our bylaw right now, I think, is pretty limiting on it. The flexible residential development has limitations, and you can get somewhere with it, but I'm just wondering if we could start a conversation and maybe look at whether this is something the board might feel, and maybe you don't, but I'm being asked by various people about it, whether it's something that we might look at to see if we should include a provision in the bylaw that is specific to over 55, beyond the Forbes Hill site, to allow it to be put maybe in more districts or with guidelines and limitations that are appropriate to the particular districts. Allow it perhaps by special permit, and probably get involved with site plan approval, and which I think it would be, but maybe have the planning board involved. So Mr. Halkiotis suggested I come before the board to talk about it. I had one client who asked me recently about a particular site in a residential district, but it's a fair sized site. And I said to him, it's not allowed. There's nothing in the bylaw that would allow this. And yet he's asked me about it. A very active real estate broker in the town has asked me about it. And people want, because they've got people coming to them all the time saying, I'd like to be able to live in something like that. I need to get, I want to move out of my big house and do that. So I wanted to explore that with you and begin the conversation on behalf of clients and others who've asked me about it. Mr. Halkiotis and I have had some limited discussions on it. And it's, this is not assisted living, which is allowed in all districts by special permit from the zoning board. This is something entirely different. I know sometimes people may get mixed up on that, but this is not assisted living. This is age-restricted living of people who are generally quite independent, but want to give up some of the responsibilities of owning houses that they've had for a long time. So that's really why I'm here, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I don't have a whole lot of specifics to recommend, just that the question is, is there some flexibility or some revision to the bylaw? We've done the mixed use overlay district, and I expect that will produce some activity, favorable activity for the downtown area. The Forbes Hill mixed use overlay district has some flexibility that could be useful, but that really limits it to one site. And I wonder if we ought to look at more sites in town that might support this for the people who are asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fred. Mr. Halkiotis, would you like to jump in here for a minute?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Over the years, I have heard a number of people in town say they wish that there was the opportunity to have a 55 or older housing option available. These have kind of, they've come in ebbed and flowed in waves of popularity. The real estate market saw a number of them built 15 years ago, and then the market seemed to saturate and you didn't see as many. They are a fairly popular housing type for those people that just want to live with people in their age group and not have kids playing ball in the street and that kind of thing. I've had a lot of experience with age restricted developments in Marshfield, and I ended up rewriting the Marshfield bylaw about 10 years ago. As you know, there's not a lot of open, vacant, available real estate left in town. So that the number of greenfield options for something like this is fairly limited. However, I always caution the board not to just think in terms of what you see on the ground today, but buildings can be raised, sites can be demolished, and new construction and redevelopment can take place. And that is an ongoing thing that we're going to see into the future continue. So this type of development could be a redevelopment type situation. Oftentimes they do have bylaws require that they do have some land around them so that they're a little bit more of a campus than an urban kind of condominium or townhouse type building. But it's really up to the board about whether or not you'd like to see this as an option available in our bylaw. Many communities do have bylaws that allow for these. I have seen and been involved with controversies and difficult situations that have resulted in age-restricted developments. And these are things like an adult child of some residents is having marital difficulties, and they move out and they move into the age-restricted development, and they're only 35 years old. And the people in the neighborhood start, pointing and saying, you're violating the zoning bylaw and the covenant to live in these types of regular developments. And sometimes those scenarios can involve children involved as well. So there are a number of problems that I've seen come up in age-restricted developments, but they are a popular housing type for those people that choose to do that. Right, what I told David was that right now we are trying to focus for the remainder of this year on the Route 1 corridor study, getting that zoning approved in the public participation process that we really need to start to engage in now as best we can given these circumstances, so that when we approach a special town meeting in the fall, we will have our bylaw ready to go. As you know, Pat and I have been really kind of sidetracked, doing a lot of refocusing on economic development and helping our local businesses recover from the economic impacts of the pandemic. And so my time and Pat's time for the foreseeable future is going to be focusing on continuing to do that economic development work and to try to finish up the Route 1 corridor project. So I indicated to David that I didn't think I was going to be available to work on writing a bylaw like this now, but I certainly have had experience doing it, and I would look to the work they had done in the past to guide me going forward with a similar bylaw.
Counselor, would you be willing to throw a draft of a bylaw to Mr. Halkiotis from your experience?
I would. I think that Paul's experience is very helpful, but I do appreciate that the Route 1 project, the Route 1 rezoning project is a big project, and then throw in all the other work that he's been doing with Pat, dealing with the pandemic conditions, not asking him to get sidetracked from that. I will comment that to a couple of things that Paul mentioned, the idea of, what happens if somebody's 30-something child moves in for a while. And I have been involved and have reviewed over 55 projects, some of which are very specific. Nobody can stay under a certain age for more than so many days a year or so many months a year. And then I looked at one recently down in Plymouth County for a client, and I think the limitation was somebody over 55 had to live there, period. They didn't care who the owner was. They didn't seem to care who might live there as long as somebody was over 55. That was the other side of what I've seen more locally with restrictions that would seem to limit, certainly limit kids, young people living there. And that's one of the issues for some people, that some people like the idea of living with people their own age and aren't that interested in living with the mixed age groups. Some people think they're attractive because these projects, because they don't attract children to add to the school population. You can think that's good or think it's bad. And really, it depends. But for some people, these are very attractive. And my goodness, you look at some of the ads in the Sunday Globe real estate section, they're pushing these projects all over the place. So I think there's a demand. And I could work on it. I'll talk to some of my clients, see if how they want to pursue it. And I don't want to take Paul and Pat away from what they're doing, but this was an opportunity that came up to a client of mine, and he asked me to speak to you about it, at least begin the discussion. Although I've explained that nothing is going to get done for some months because the Route 1 project is going to take the planning department's attention for even before the pandemic hit us. I knew that was the major project this year. So I'm happy to try to pursue it with some clients and come back with Paul and Pat with maybe some sort of a draft at some point, if that's what my clients want to pursue. I just wanted to get some feedback from the board in terms of what issues you folks thought might be problematic or important, what things you might think would be good aspects of these projects. And if you can't speak to that now, that's okay also. But I don't want to distract Paul.
Thank you, Councilor. Mr. Pachkowski?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. A couple of things. One, we wouldn't be able to tackle this until after the fall town meeting. There's no way we could do it between now and then. I would like to see, I don't have a problem with it, but I would like to see some bylaws from towns that have it, just to see what, because, first look at it here, first thing that came to my mind was increased density. That if you go over 55, they're going to want increased density, which is, is okay but I would like to know what they're doing this. Again, first glance, I wouldn't be in favor of putting in residential districts. It's still, apartments or condos, call them what you want. The people that live inside may be over 55, but they still look like an apartment or a condo or a townhouse. The other thing that always gets me on over 55s is there is nothing stopping anybody, developer, from building one right now in Norwood. They can build, I'll just throw a name out there. John Marini builds a bunch of condos in Norwood or apartments in Norwood. There's nothing that says that he can't say, I'm going to build over 55. I want this to be an over 55 development. At least that's my opinion. I don't think there's anything holding him back from doing that. Well, why don't they do it now? So the first thing I think of is increased density, and specifically for that purpose. So I would like to see some bylaws from other towns, because I'm sure I'm missing something here. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good point.
Mr. Sheehan, have you got anything to contribute?
Just on what Ernie was just saying, if some builder wanted to do that, and he, it's not in the law, I guess he'd have to have it in the bylaws to have it at that age. Is that correct?
Well, Paul may have a more detailed comment on that, but I've seen it in some towns where they create overlay districts, or I think it's overlay, where it's for senior residential housing. And that's where they allow over 55s in districts that wouldn't normally allow large multifamily projects to go. And it's done to favor the type of development that might keep people who've been involved in a town for a long time able to stay in that town. So that's one of the considerations. I understand Ernie's comments about density and all that, and that is a concern. But Paul may have some comments about how it's been handled in his experience. Thank you.
So I think that it is possible for a property owner to place a covenant or a deed restriction or a homeowners association document that does limit the age of the people that live there. And the reason why that's allowed and it's not considered some form of discrimination is because back in the Clinton administration, they passed the Housing for Old People Act, HOPA. And that's what kind of cleared the way for these types of developments that didn't discriminate against young people from living in these types of developments. So I agree with Ernie's statement that I think that somebody could do this now, but a lot of communities have developed bylaws specific to this type of development. And if it's something that the board is interested in doing, we can take a look at examining other bylaws and presenting some options for going forward, if that's what the board would like to do.
Thank you. Mr. Hatchie, would you like to throw in your contribution, please?
The idea of seeing bylaws from other towns is very interesting. I think Plymouth and Marshfield have been mentioned, and it's pretty clear that Norwood is much different in terms of its just current existence than a town like that has a lot of that open space to work with. So I'd be interested in seeing how this has come to fruition in towns that more closely resemble Norwood and more in the redevelopment context. So that's my thoughts. But I know all of us are just sort of now thinking about it, but we're not like philosophically opposed to it. But there's a lot of considerations to be had.
Thank you, Brian. Rob Bamber?
Hey, I'm kind of breaking up here, but yeah, I'd kind of like to mirror Ernie's thoughts on that, where I wouldn't want to see this as a tool used to increase density in an area that otherwise would have an underlying number already. I don't know why we couldn't, if it's already been established that it could be done elsewhere. But I'll keep an open mind and take a look and go forward, see where it goes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have any comments at this time? I want to thank you for the contributions. And Mr. Halkiotis, if you could, at your opportunity, get us a couple of bylaws, if you a reference where you would recommend we go to take a look, and we could do a little research on our own, if you will. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'll volunteer to help out.
Thank you, David.
All right.
Okay. Anything further on the discussion?
Nope. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay. All right. That takes care of the scheduled agenda items. Department updates and other business, Paul?
Good night, all.
Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start by inviting Pat to brief the board on the small business grant program that he and Joe Collins have worked on. They put in a lot of time over the last few weeks to really kind of rush and get this grant program up and running, review the applications, get all the information needed to review those applications and make a decision. Pat and Joe have done really great work. So I'll hand it off to Pat to brief the board on that project.
Yep. Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so as Paul mentioned, the COVID-19 small business grant wrapped up on last Friday. That was a kind of a program that our town manager Tony Mizuko helped spearhead. I think we took something from the town of Acton and we kind of made some minor changes and we were able to make use of existing funding we had through a DHCD 40R project. I think it was $75,000 that we had. That was basically, there was no restrictions in how we spent it. And so this was a good use to get that money back to businesses that were struggling. And, we had only had an open period where people could submit for about 2 weeks. So I think we opened on June 10th and we closed it out on June 19th. So it was a pretty quick turnaround. We had about 23 applicants and 15 were complied in terms of necessary materials, our application requirements, and just basically met all the restrictions of what we were looking for a successful applicant. And so that was kind of a difficult process because we're usually the ones applying for grants. We're not really running grant programs, so that was definitely a learning opportunity for me and Joe to know what it's like on the other end when we're actually dealing with people submitting applications and having to go back to make sure we get all the necessary information. Doing something like this, obviously we want to help out as many people as possible. We also want to make sure that we collect all substantial information we can so that we can confirm that people that will be receiving these grants are applicable to what our criteria. So that was pretty much a process of having to make sure we go back to these applicants to get tax information, get information on their gross receipts, do comparables between 2019 and 2020. So it was pretty good process. Like I said, we had 15 winners. We didn't end up having to do a lottery process because the amount of funding we had and the fact that the max you could ask for was $4,000. We ended up giving away a little bit under $60,000 out of that $75,000. So that was pretty good. We're hoping to look into doing an additional phase. Like I said, we have $15,000 left over from that one pool of money, and we have some additional funds through the recapture program that we did through the community development block grant housing rehab program, where I think about 40,000, Paul. I think that was unrestricted around there. So some of that money, we got to see where we're at and see if we want to use that money with the additional 15,000 that wasn't used to do a phase 2. But at the same time, Paul, I think, has mentioned at previous meetings, we're involved in a regional application with about 20 or so other towns through the Metropolitan Area Planning Council to go after some CARES Act money that we can use for future micro grants for micro businesses under 5 or more full-time employees. So we're hopeful, if we can, we're able to, do something ourselves with money we had in house, but if we're able to get, I think we're up to hopefully $200,000 from the CARES Act money, then we can help out some more businesses. So this was it's a great first run to help out who we could with what we had. But we're optimistic we can bring this back out and continue it probably later in the summer and perhaps the fall to reach additional businesses in Norwood. So that's about it. So we're in the process right now of just getting the award letters out and getting the checks processed to those 15 winners.
Thank you, Pat.
Yep.
Paul,
That's about it.
What was that, Pat?
So that's about it. If anyone has any questions.
Okay. Anything further? Any other business you want to talk about at this time?
I just have one other update for the board. You may have read in the paper that we have the Forbes Hill property under agreement or in the process of putting it under agreement. The town received, I think 3 or 4 bids. And the winning bid was from a development company called Continental, based out of New Jersey. They are multifamily residential home builders predominantly. They bid $13,515,000. The Board of Selectmen voted to accept that bid, and Town Council is in the process of working with their attorney to close the deal. They have reached out to us and requested a meeting to begin the discussions about what they'd be proposing to build. We have a meeting set up for next Monday, July 6th at 10 a.m. Pat and I will be meeting with them, and they invited any planning board members. We can't have a quorum, but if there's a board member available, we'd like to have you join us for that meeting. It will be a meeting like this, a virtual meeting. What I understand is that they will be proposing to build some multifamily residential. I don't know whether those would be townhome ownership condominiums or whether they would be rental apartments. We'll find that out. But I was pleased to see that they are also thinking about building a medium-sized life science building, so that would complement what we already have up in that area with Moderna, and would be a mixed-use development that just wouldn't be straight residential. So we know that Continental is a well-heeled developer, and they have a lot of experience. And so we're glad that we'll be working with somebody that knows the ropes and knows how to what the process is to develop. Because the Forbes Hill mixed-use overlay district has a limitation on the number of residential units, it caps it off at 175. So we do know that whatever they'll be proposing for multifamily, that it probably won't be exceeding that. So that, and in addition to a life science office building, at this point seems like a good reuse of that property.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Sheehan?
Yes, when you say a life science office building, is that similar to what, or the previous purchaser or almost purchaser was recommending? Or what would a life science office building be? And how different would that be from a regular office building?
So I think we could say that Moderna's facility is a life science office building. It's also a lab. Dr. Felice was proposing a medical complex with doctors' offices, and then it was going to have a whole host of other ancillary uses like a theater and a hotel and retail. So that's the big difference between what was originally being proposed. Dr. Felice did submit a proposal, a bid for 13 million, and he was outbid. So one of my concerns working with Dr. Felice was going to be that he's a physician and not a developer, and he doesn't have knowledge of the real estate industry and real estate development. I don't have this concern with this new company. Although they're from New Jersey, they've already hired engineering firm from Massachusetts to review the project and to work on the due diligence for their acquisition. So they will be using, I think, local firms to our area, and I think that's a good thing as well.
Yes, Joe.
There are also some restrictions on the border of Upland Road and how far back they'd have to go before they could build. And are those similar restrictions like that one still in place?
Those were incorporated into the zoning bylaw, and the only way that those restrictions, they would need a variance, I would think. The bylaw does have some flexibility for the board to waive some of the requirements. But for the most part, I think that restriction's in place and it's in the zoning and it needs to be followed.
What was that buffer? I forget. It was 20 feet, 25, 30 feet. What was it?
75 feet, maybe? Do you know, Ernie, do you remember?
Yeah, it was more than 20. You talking about off of Upland Road?
Yes,
It went back considerable. There was a lot of discussion about that because it goes up a hill and I think it's at least 75 or 100 feet.
Wow.
If not 125 off of Upland. I mean, there's a buffer there and I remember we had a lot of discussion over that buffer.
Are you talking about the buffer restrictions in the bylaw?
Yeah.
I think it was 150 off Upland and 125 from Investors Way.
Yep, and it was quite a ways. It tightened them in.
all
There's
right.
some wetlands there off Upland too. Paul, what time is that Monday? I may be available.
So it's at 10 o'clock on Monday morning. Let me know, any of the board members, if you're available. You don't have to go to a meeting. You just need to turn on your computer and jump in. And they did ask, they were hoping to get a planning board member or two available for the meeting if it's possible.
I would, if I could, you would just send us an email then, right? And
Yep, Pat will send you, a similar go-to-meeting invite, and we just can't have more than 3 of you join the meeting without posting it as a planning board meeting.
I will be on vacation, but I could tune in, so put me on.
I must say, Joe, you look like FDR in that chair every week. You do. A very young FDR. Paul, I'm sure you probably don't have any information now. It'll probably come out next Monday on the disposition of the mansion.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to see if they want to reuse that. We'll find out.
Okay, any other business?
No.
Anybody else like to throw anything out for this evening's meeting?
I'm good.
Okay, can I get a motion, close it?
So moved?
Second?
Second.
So moved. We have a motion and a second to close this meeting. All in favor? All opposed? Unanimous. Mr. Sheehan,
Yes.
roll call. Mr. Patrickowski,
Yes.
Brian Hatchie,
Yes.
Rob Bamba,
Yes.
and the chairman votes yes. Thank you very much, everyone, and have
Thank
a
you.
very happy and healthy 4th of July. And be careful with the fireworks.
You too.
You too. Enjoy the holiday.